spectator as well, is it?
Kind of having
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
Yeah, that's alright.
This area.
I've done a few games here, not far from me, so that's well. Yourself? Go every weekend?
Every week.
Yeah.
Mostly southeast.
Yeah, okay. Do you do games like report every week? Yeah.
They filming that game?
Yeah.
Good luck, enjoy, yeah.
Hi. Good to see you.
I'm wondering the same thing.
Everyone's wondering the same thing. We're all downstairs. You're not even alone.
I dragged my family out to look, spend 2 hours before the game, and get there early, and there's nowhere for them to stand. Should be.
Did you get any like description of where it would be?
Yeah.
You did, yeah, cool.
Testing, testing, 1, 2.
Well, every once in a while in cup football you get thrown up a pretty special fixture, and we certainly have that on the cards tonight, as for the first time in the history of women's football in this state and country, Avondale and South Melbourne go head-to-head on pitch 5 at the home of the Matildas in round 5 of the Nike FC Cup, in what promises to be a really entertaining spectacle between two high-scoring outfits, albeit in separate divisions, on a big night and a big midweek of cup football coming your way on the Football Victoria YouTube channel. My name is Oscar Rutherford. Thank you for your company tonight in what promises, as I said, to be certainly a momentous occasion, if nothing else. Avondale currently tearing up VPLW, the second tier of Victorian women's football. They've invested heavily in their women's program over the last few years and are reaping the rewards of it, and it's really now only a matter of time before they find themselves in the top flight, where they'll be regularly competing with teams like South Melbourne, of course, champions 2 seasons ago, and having made a flying start to the current campaign, are right in the mix for silverware in MPLW Victoria this campaign. Coming into tonight, it's first place in VPLW Avondale against third place in MPLW South Melbourne. South Melbourne coming to this game off the back of a 1-1 draw against Burundara in what was a big clash in MPLW over the weekend. They've made just one change to their team from that outing, and it's in goal as Christina Esposito is brought in for Ayana Aoyagi. The rest of the South Melbourne team: number 3, Annie Haffenden; number 5, Sophie Papatsanis; number 7, Franny Iamano; number 8, Akisha Sandhu; 9, Olivia Bomford; 10, Raquel Doralis; 14, Misha Westland; 16, Nikki Furukawa; 20, Alana Byrne; and 22 is Grace Taranto. As we see the two teams taking up their positions on the field as we prepare to get underway at the whistle of our central referee, Thomas Dussin. Avondale have made a couple of changes to their team from the weekend, which we'll run through in just a moment. Play is underway at the home of the Matildas. It's a big night at this venue. This isn't the only Nike Cup game taking place at the home of the Matildas on this Wednesday night. Just about 20 or 30 metres to the right of the camera on the main pitch at the home of the Matildas is Clifton Hill taking on Manningham. So a big night, particularly for the lower division teams. Mentioned that Avondale starting 11. Azia Claridge is brought into Avondale's starting 11. Of course, a former South Melbourne player, spent a number of years at the club alongside Simone Kenny coming into the Avondale starting 11. Daisy Scriven drops to the bench, whilst Bronwyn Studman is the main absentee for Avondale tonight. So we see an early attacking spell for the Avengers. And for the first time, Raquel Doralis looking to take South forward. Running through the rest of that Avondale team. In goal is Brooke Bennett. Number 2 is Azia Claridge. Number 3 is Larry Walsh. Number 8 is Elise Kellen Knight. Number 9, Correa Aquino. 10, Safri Lyons. 12, Simone Kenny. 13, Addison Steiner. 15, Liliana Lamage. 17, Gulchan Janet Saris. And 19, Saki Nishihara. Very much a star-studded Avondale lineup, which has taken them to 11 wins from 11 games in VPLW this season and a cool goal difference of 60 after just those 11 games played. South Melbourne are themselves a high-scoring outfit. In MPLW, these two teams, the highest scorers in their respective divisions, albeit South's 28 goals from 11 games looks comparatively less impressive to what Avondale have been able to put up. Avondale, who just a couple of weeks ago took on the other standout team in VPLW, Keilor Park, came away with a 4-3 win. So the 7 goals that Avondale have conceded in the league this season, 3 of them coming a couple of weeks back. Otherwise, they have been absolutely dominant. Also, in the Nike Cup, getting to this stage, a 7-0 win over Altona City, followed by a 9-0 win over Murrelbach. But fair to say that tonight's opposition will pose a sterner test than Avondale have been used to, as we see that ball played back to Brooke Bennett, but a little bit too much pace on it, and South Melbourne will have the first corner of the evening. It's Liv Bomford who heads on over to send in the in-swinging cross. See the South Melbourne corner routine. Players crowding at that far post. That's where Bomford sends the ball. It's over the head of the goalkeeper. The referee's whistle, though, blowing, motioning that there was a shove somewhere in the massive bodies. So Avondale avoid an early scare. Brooke Bennett will head on over and gratefully pick up the ball before getting play back underway. No shortage of top-flight experience in the Avondale lineup. Indeed, A-League experience as well, of course. Look at the likes of Gulchan Janitsaris, Correa Aquino more recently, as well as Elise Kelland Knight. Here is a chance for Avondale. The ball sent in is awkward to deal with for Esposito. Does just enough as South get the ball clear. Westland sending the ball out to Akeisha Sandhu. Trying to let it in between her legs was Franny Iamano. It rolls out for an Avondale throw. Avondale coached by Derek Donnelly, whose voice you might have just been able to hear, yelling out some encouragement to his players. It's certainly a big occasion for Avondale and a real chance to test themselves against some of the best Victorian football has to offer. Here is Westland playing it back to Iamano, who's quickly closed down. Strong from Papatsanis. Papatsanis who will take the throw. Uses Bomford. Sent inboard to Alana Byrne, and now this is Grace Taranto. Papatsanis again, this time looking towards Furukawa. Doralis will look to get onto it, but is unable to keep the ball in play. Taranto will keep the ball in play. Looks cross-field with the long ball sent up. This is Lyons and Kellen Knight. Lofting the ball over the top fairly effectively as well towards Addison Steiner. Wasn't quite able to get there in time. The chance still alive as we see the ambitious attempt coming in from Correa Aquino. That one well wide, though, of Christina Esposito's goal. Safri Lyons in the number 10 shirt, another of the former South Melbourne players in this Avondale lineup. Of course, Lyons vastly experienced in Victorian football in years gone by. See Papatsanis there losing her feet as she attempted to shift direction. Nishihara to take the throw. Chested down by Aquino. Meets the contact of Westland, sends it inside. There's the shot that's come in. Simone Kenny with the attempt. Once again, though, wide of Esposito's post, but fair to say, Avondale showing that they will pose some attacking threat tonight. And this will be far from a straightforward assignment for South Melbourne. A really high-intensity start to the game as well. Lamage there meeting the long ball sent up by the goalkeeper. Left by Doralis. And Byrne spreads it to Sandu. South Melbourne started this season in red-hot form, picking up win after win, scoring relentlessly. They've endured one of their tougher patches, or undoubtedly their toughest patch of the season over the last 4 or 5 weeks, drawing 4 of their last 5 league games, as well as a 3-0 loss to Essendon Royals in that mix. It's been a difficult spell for Matt Shepherd's team. That cross sent inside, well met by Taranto. Walsh hoping to continue the attack by winning it back from Iamano. Eventually Avondale do succeed. Cross sent in board. There's a follow-up that almost fell to Kenny, and now having a ping was Safri Lyons, and that one into the gloves of Esposito. So the best spell of the match for Avondale, as they pin back South Melbourne for a couple of minutes. South now looking to reverse the direction as Raquel Doralis drops deep to participate in the build-up. Santu and Iamano combine. This is Francesca Iamano, another of the players with A-League experience. Shows the skills, but slips at the vital moment. And the end result will be an Avondale goal kick. South Melbourne have played just the one previous round of this competition where they proved too strong for Eltham Redbacks. A 3-0 win a few weeks ago. Raquel Doralis with a brace, Nikki Furukawa the other goal. That ball sent back to Esposito, who had to think fast and responded really well to the pressure applied by Addison Steiner. Steiner, who comes into tonight's game as perhaps the most informed player on the pitch. Avondale won 11-0 at the weekend against Melbourne University, and Steiner scored 5 of those goals. She takes her league tally this season already up to 25. See Aquino, who herself isn't faring too badly. She's got 18 to her name in VPLW this season. And now it's South Melbourne who are springing forward with the counter-attack. Ball over the top for Furukawa. Nikki Furukawa just wide of the post. It's the cleanest look at goal that either team has had in the opening 10 and a bit minutes of this contest. And Nikki Furukawa, South's leading goal scorer this season, very nearly adding to her tally. This is Nishihara playing it inboard to Steiner. Lyons hoping to use Kenny, but Misha Westland picked her pocket. Walsh gives the ball away to Iamano, but makes amends. Larissa Walsh, one of the players who dropped down a division to join Avondale, having played at Calder previously. Coming to Victorian football from NPL football in Western Australia. She was a prolific scorer there as well. Of course, coming to Avondale and joining Bronwyn Studman, who herself came from Perth Red Star. Studman not in the team tonight. This is Walsh. Cross inside, hoping for Steiner. Steiner got a snapshot away. Papatsanis well positioned, and he happened and sent it clear. Kellen Knight leaves it for Nishihara. Sent forward, Taranto resumes her tussle with Aquino. Kenny uses Kellen Knight back inboard to Nishihara. And the attempted return ball. Just a little too far away for Simone Kenny. Player who joined Avondale from Eltham Redbacks in the off-season. The team that South beat in the previous round of the Cup. Westland for South sends it in to Byrne. Byrne looks for Furukawa, but well positioned was Nishihara. It's fair to say that the game has just gone down a level or two since the frenetic opening. Avondale very comfortable with the ball at their feet, happy to take possession off their more fancied opponents. But you can already see in this first 15 minutes that the gap between these two teams isn't what you'd expect from a team near the top of the top flight and one in the second division. Ball looking for Aquino, but Papatsanis read it well. Steiner with the little shove to get Haffenden out of the way. Great vision to pick out Kellen Knight in midfield. Nishihara plays through lines. Back to Nishihara. Now Aquino tries to turn Taranto. Still Correa Aquino. Nishihara. And Avondale will retreat, at least temporarily. Kellen Knight sends it back up forward. There was Furukawa contributing to the defence. Avondale have spent an impressive amount of time in the South Melbourne half, even their final third in the opening 15 minutes of this game. South to get play back underway with the throw. Physical battle there between Doralis and Lamage. Liana Lamage, another player with top flight experience, brought into Avondale from Heidelberg. Isn't quite able to get the regular game time she was after, but has found a solid place here at Avondale as Esposito once again with the cleverness with the ball at her feet, despite Anderson Steiner's pressure. Steiner, another of the big-name recruits for Avondale. She came across from Casey Comets, having been the VPLW Best and Fairest and Golden Boot winner last season. Claridge out to Walsh. Happy to be patient. Back to Janet Saris. Gulchan Janitsaris. Some may know her as Gulchan Kocha. But now continuing to ply her trade at the heart of defence for Avondale, the former Turkish international. Really is an Avondale team chock full of pedigree in Australia and overseas as well. That ball sent in by Papatsanis. Could just about fall into the path of Bomford. Nishihara sent it clear, but only as far as Papatsanis. His cross inside, unable to pick out a teammate. Claridge flicks it towards the corner flag. Santu inboard to Byrne. Alana Byrne from a long way out. Got underneath her attempt and it was well off target as a result. Dangerous giveaway there by Esposito. Nishihara looking inboard. Turn from Steiner, lines. Effectively blocked though by Misha Westland. Mentioned this match and the one at the pitch just a few metres away, Clifton Hill and Manningham in the Nike Cup tonight. Also cup action coming tomorrow and on Friday night as that ball hopes for Furukawa, but Bennett always going to get there first. Got Bayside Argonauts taking on Geelong Galaxy tomorrow, as well as Burundara and Bulleen. It's an all top flight encounter before another one of those in Spring Hills taking on FE Academy on Friday night. Furukawa in the penalty area, turns one way then the other. Fires the shot on goal. Brooke Bennett making the theatrical save, it's probably fair to say. But behind for a South Melbourne corner is the end result. South Melbourne did score their goal on the weekend from a corner. Raquel Doralis at the near post. I'll try their luck again with this routine. Bennett comes to claim, wasn't able to make a clean catch, but the referee's whistle will come to a rescue. So again, you maybe sense a little bit of vulnerability for Avondale defending those corner chances. But they've escaped the first 21 minutes of this half unscathed. And having put out a very impressive showing against this South Melbourne outfit. Homage is closed down by Furukawa. Ball sent up by Janitsaris, met by Sandhu. Ball lofted up, met by Hathenden. Papatsanis and Nishihara resumed their duel. And Sandhu happy to retreat to Taranto. Now Bomford overhits the pass towards Furukawa. Of course, this is a fixture that has been repeatedly contested on big stages in Victorian men's football. Really exciting to see Avondale getting up to scratch in the women's game as well. And they have closed the gap with clubs like South Melbourne with impressive speed. Climbing the ranks almost season after season in the last few years. And closer they've gotten to the point of being right on the doorstep of top flight football. You can only imagine how momentous it would be for Avondale if they could knock off South tonight as a second division team. As if the rest of Victorian football needed more of a warning, that would be it. This is Furukawa though for South Melbourne. Once again trying to race past Nishihara, does so and again got a shot away on target. But yet to really test Brooke Bennett, that was a fairly comfortable take as well. Taranto's header just trying to get it away. Opportunity here for Correa Aquino. Was through on goal, but narrowly offside. And having managed to avoid getting pinned back for the last 10 or so minutes, South Melbourne can see how easily Avondale can strike and get in behind. Correa Aquino were onside there. You would have been pretty confident in her chances of finishing off the opportunity. Aquino, who maybe has taken advantage of the lower division opportunity for her scoring numbers this season, but to be fair, she did it in the top flight as well. Fans of MPL Victoria will recall her first season at Burundara, where the newly promoted team took the competition by storm, and Aquino in particular, which earned her that A-League contract at Melbourne Victory. Firm coming together there between Kellen Knight and Liv Bomford. Bomford getting the worst end of it, but looks as if she'll be all right to shake it off and continue. Taranto not interested in sending the ball into the box just yet. Leaves that task to Bomford. Well read, though, by Lamage. And now Claridge for Avondale. Spent 8 seasons at South Melbourne, did Azia Claridge. Went from being a junior all the way up to making her senior debut. It's very much a night with a little bit of extra meaning for her, coming up against her former club. Sandhu looks inboard to Iamano. Attempted release for Westland will be curtailed by the offside flag. Throw in for Avondale. Ball stolen off the toes of Simone Kenny, and South Melbourne once again look to bring their counter-attacking football. Ball through. There's a contest between Lyons and Bomford. Bomford eventually gets the ball back. Now Sandhu. Still going Akeisha Sandhu. Out towards Furukawa. Well met, though, by Nishihara. See Avondale getting just about everybody behind the ball, bar the 2 players up top, Aquino and Steiner. Certainly taking the South Melbourne attacking threat very seriously. Sandhu from a long way out. But Bennett happy to let it run wide of a post. Brooke Bennett, who was BPLW goalkeeper of the year last season at Casey Comets before making the move up north to Avondale. Chance now for Bomford with another dead ball situation. The hand signal is made. Lofts it into the box. Falls the way of Taranto. Hits the post and out. It's as close as South have come tonight. Grace Taranto pulling the trigger as the ball fell her way. And Brooke Bennett grateful that it's narrowly off target again. So as much as it's been, I'd say, a fairly even contest in terms of the general play, it's very much South Melbourne creating the better opportunities, or at least coming the closer to scoring. But Avondale happy to ride their luck for now. Score remains 0-0 as we tick over half an hour played in this Nike Cup 5th round fixture. Kellen Knight trying the release and clattering into our central referee. And Thomas Dustin will get us back underway with the drop ball. Gives Kellen Knight a chance to repeat the trick. She accepts the invitation, sends it towards Aquino. Closed down by a couple of South Melbourne bodies, and last touch coming off the Avondale player. Marge looking up towards Steiner. Taranto best positioned. Heard the calls from Iamano for the ball to be sent through. Kenny up to Aquino. Now Steiner has Nishihara on the left. That's where she heads. But a solid defensive sliding challenge from Niki Furukawa to send the ball away. And behind for an Avondale corner. Safri Lines sends it in. Meets the head of Haffenden, which is awkward to deal with for Esposito. Goalkeeper did well, though. And the attempted release could cause herself some more trouble. South Melbourne scrambling defence, get the ball clear. And Doralis and Furukawa not on the same page. Kellen Knight inboard to Aquino. Aquino trying to pick out Walsh just behind her fellow attacker. Really can see the attacking quality that Avondale have in their ranks. A couple of players very happy to have the ball in those tight spaces and clearly capable of generating a bit of something from nothing. Constantly keeping the South defence on alert. For now, though, it's South on the attack. Furukawa has a little bit of space, lets it run, you'd say, too far across her body. And as a result, the shot swerves well wide. Furukawa, who's probably been the most dangerous attacking outlet for South Melbourne. South's decline in wins has largely coincided with her reduction in scoring. Matt Shepherd will be very keen to see his front line finding the back with a little bit more regularity as we head into the second half of the campaign. A little bit more like we saw in the first month or 6 weeks of the season, when South really were red hot how they played their football, but Avondale once again seeing an opportunity. Nishihara sent in behind Furukawa, not for the first time, with a really well-timed challenge in around about that same position. And for a player best known for her attacking output, she's certainly pulling her weight in a defensive sense as well. Another Avondale corner to be sent in by Lines. This one's along the deck. Kenny back out to Lyons. This time sends it into the area. Couldn't find a teammate, and Kellen Knight with a scuffed shot. Could have fallen awkwardly, but the South Melbourne numbers prevail. And eventually the ball is played back by Lamage to Claridge. And to the experienced head of Genetsaris. Nishihara, who's been just about everywhere on this left flank in the first half. Up and down the pitch she's been. Lyons looks inboard. Steiner couldn't quite take control. And Bomford had the wherewithal to send it back to Nikki Furukawa. Walsh wins it back from Sandu. Up to Steiner. Addison Steiner. Shot on target, but never likely to beat Christina Esposito from there. Both goalkeepers have dealt with most of the shots on their goal fairly comfortably in this first half. The main worry for Brooke Bennett coming with those set-piece routines, and maybe for Christina Esposito and the playing out from the back that South Melbourne have almost been caught on a couple of times. Furukawa. Doralis into Westland. Avondale kept her well marshalled, and had that ball been just a little bit higher, Addison Steiner would have been in on goal, but Grace Taranto stepped up and made an excellent intercepting header. We've already had a couple of teams book their place in the quarterfinals of the Nike Cup this season. Heidelberg United last night doing so at Caroline Springs George Cross. Alamein as well, they did so last week against Calder, and on the same night there was certainly a cup set as Bandura United knocked out Essendon Royals. So Bandura, Alamein and Heidelberg, the three teams already in the next round of this competition. We'll have a couple more names on that list at the end of tonight. Of course, one of Clifton Hill or Manningham as well. There's one of these two teams in front of us. Probably fair to say that after 40 minutes of this first half, we're not a whole lot wiser as to who it will be progressing in the Nike Cup. Both teams have given reason to believe that they might be capable of coming out on top. This is Nishihara for Avondale. Again tries to release Steiner. Taranto has had a really good half. Wins it back from the American striker. Still continuing a run is Grace Taranto. Furukawa trying to return it to her. But much too high quality of a defender, Gulchan Janitsaris, to be troubled by that ball. Janitsaris again, sending it this time to Aquino. It's been a real feature of this first half. Both teams closing down the space on their opposition all over the pitch. There's not been a lot of time on the ball for anyone, not much time to breathe. You'd expect that that would become slightly less intense, the pressing and the closing down in the second half, just naturally as players tire. At which point the extra depth of the South Melbourne squad may become a real factor. Just the 4 players named on the bench on Avondale's team sheet tonight. Very much operating with a fairly narrow squad to achieve what they have so far this season. Doralis hoping for the Westland run. Not enough space on this right side of the pitch. Both teams have struggled in being closed down when running down those wings. The defences limiting the space very much so. There's Aquino and Doralis with the challenge, and illegally so by Doralis, according to our referee. You can hear the South Strikers' protestations, but Avondale will waste no time getting play back underway. Janitsaris out to Claridge. In towards Kenny. He's passed towards Walsh. He's miscued. Into the final minute of regulation in this first half. High intensity start to this game. And an intensity which is, for the most part, carried on throughout the first half. Interesting to see how it develops in the second 45 with players tiring. Midweek football, of course, exacerbating those factors even more. This is Doralis for South Melbourne, who looked to make a move just before the break. Aquino is offside. There was some nice play from Liliana Lamage stepping out of the defence and sending the ball through. But that will be all the action for the first 45. 0-0 remains the score at the break. South Melbourne and Avondale, two teams flying high in their respective divisions. And very much, you'd imagine, a preview of what we'll see in the top flight of Victorian football next campaign. And they've been evenly matched up to this point at the home of the Matildas. An entertaining affair. South Melbourne have come closest. Grace Taranto hitting the post. But for now, the game remains very much finely poised heading in to the second 45. Half-time at the home of the Matildas. Scoreline reads Avondale 0, South Melbourne 0. Welcome back to the home of the Matildas. Pitch 5 is the scene as South Melbourne and Avondale do battle in the Nike FC Cup. 0-0 the score at the break after a really entertaining first 45 minutes. South Melbourne, of course, NPLW team, sitting third on the ladder in Victoria's top flight against an Avondale team tearing up the second division. The ball in there is a good one. Addison Steiner very nearly latching onto it after a wonderful bit of play from Safri Lyons, which could have had Avondale in front. But South Melbourne avoid the first scare of the half. And a really bright start for the Avengers. Just about as good a look as they've had in this game, Avondale. They had a good first 45 showing. That clearance from Esposito's right into Correa Aquino. Aquino is crowded by about 5 or 6 South bodies. Still, she has the ball to the edge of the area where Lyons continues the attack. Now Steiner waits for the supporting run from Nishihara. And the touch from Furukawa, though, sends it behind for an Avondale corner. Sent in to the area. Headed clear by Misha Westland. And South Melbourne repel the danger for now. South, who had, who probably came the closest out of the two teams in the first 45, despite being pretty evenly split in terms of control of the ball and territory. And for the first time now in the second half, it's South Melbourne charging forward. Furukawa cuts in onto her left. That shot well blocked by Simone Kenny. Now Azia Claridge for chance here for Larry Walsh. Cross inside is a good one, and Correa Aquino couldn't keep her shot down. Golden chance for Avondale. Started by Claridge into Walsh, and Correa Aquino somehow wasn't able to get her shot on target. It's been all Avondale in the first few minutes of this second half. They have got South right where they want them. Correa Aquino with the best chance of the lot. This is Bomford. Looking to turn past Kellen Knight and doing so effectively. Spreads it to Iamano, cross inside. Opportunity here for Westland, retreats to Sandhu. Keisha Sandhu from a long way tries her luck. That one right down the throat, though, of Brooke Bennett. Now Steiner for Avondale, over the top for Aquino, offside. Fair to say that this second half is picked up right where the first left off. Certainly Avondale, who are on top, they were probably the better team at the opening of the first half as well. South were able to survive that opening spell of pressure before probably taking a little bit more control as the half wore on. But right now they're going through a tough spell. Hoping to change that is Bomford, who has a couple players to try work her way through. Kellen Knight wins back possession for Avondale. Aquino is again flagged for offside. You can see her playing a high-risk approach to the attack in this game, as she's very much made a success of doing over the last few years in Australian football. Timing those runs just right, hasn't got it up to now. This is Doralis, who herself is flagged offside. So both teams' defensive lines doing their jobs. Catching a couple of overly greedy attackers in the first few minutes of this second half. Get back underway with Gulcha Janitsaris, another player with colder connections and on the pitch tonight. I think Alana Byrne there, the penalised player for a shove on Safri line, so that will allow Elise Kelland Knight to attempt to conjure up some magic with the dead ball. 115 Matilda's caps to her name, Elise Kelland Knight. Ball into the area and a comfortable take for Esposito. Met there by Asia Claridge, which will allow Avondale to very quickly restart their attacking move. This time out to Nishihara, looking for lines. Byrne finds Doralis now, South Melbourne. Westland trying to play through for Akawa, but a crucial defensive touch denied her. And South Melbourne will now try to spend a little bit of time on the ball themselves. Taranto, who is one of South's best in the first 45. That attempted long ball hasn't panned out as she would have hoped, and the whistle again denies Correa Aquino. Seemed to be a little bit overly physical in creating that space for the run in behind. We'll have extra time and penalties if these teams can't be separated after 90 minutes. It's not as if there's been a lack of goalmouth action up to this point. You certainly feel as if there'll be opportunities for teams, for either one of the teams really, to take the lead, as we've already seen in this second half, particularly for Avondale, who are trying to break down the South defence again. It's a good ball from Aquino. Comes back out to the Japanese forward, Correa Aquino. Really solid defending, though, to deny her from Annie Haffenden. And that will allow Elise Kellen Knight to head on over and deliver this corner. Kellen Knight sends it into the near post. There in position was Westland. And it'll be a rinse and repeat as Elise Kellen Knight will hope for a slightly better delivery this time round. Assistant referee just making sure it's legally positioned before the corner is sent in. Kellen Knight with a little bit more loft this time. Arriving was Safri Lyons, but South Melbourne have the chance now to spring forward. Bomford wrestles Kenny. Asia Claridge with the sliding challenge did enough to disrupt the attack. And that's clever from Kellen Knight. As Kenny looks to release Aquino. Haffenden again under the pump. Defended well, but that pass from Esposito causes danger. Correa Aquino. Well, you can understand why she took the shot on. Found herself in space, right on the edge of the area. But she's not the first player tonight. He's gotten right underneath one of those long-range attempts. And the goalkeeper untroubled at the end of the day. South Melbourne have dodged a handful of bullets now in this second half. Haven't really been able to re-establish themselves since we came out from the break. Aquino looking for Steiner. Haffenden getting back. Walsh now trying to continue the attack. Bomford, though, releases Iamano. She can keep this in play, the South captain. Her team will have a real good look. Iamano with the cross towards Doralis. Now for Akawa. Threw her body at it. Always a difficult finish, running at full pace as she was. So South Melbourne just reminding us of their own attacking threat on the counter-attack there. You'd think that Derek Donnelly would be the much happier of the coaches with the way this second half has gone so far. Aquino makes some space for herself before lofting it in to the penalty area for Christina Esposito to claim. Again, South give away the ball early, but they've won it back in the middle of the park. For Akawa, set a task. See the charging defensive run from Janet Saris. Ball found its way into the penalty area. And Doralis, the ball just getting up a little bit too high for her to get any meaningful power on the attempt. But once more, South Melbourne rapid on the, in transition rather. Steiner fouls Haffenden. Steiner, met by Taranto with the ball. Now Byrne, too strong for her American opponent. Steiner gets the last laugh as she sends it out to Nishihara. Ball inside over the head of Kellen Knight. And Sandu hoping that the goal line comes to a rescue, and indeed it does. Well, the referee has pointed for a corner though. And much to the dismay of the South Melbourne players, there's another big opportunity for Avondale. Kellen Knight was already at the corner flag, so she's in position to deliver another in-swinging ball. It was Walsh coming short, who does now receive. It's Larry Walsh who puts the cross into the area. Steiner swings a boot at it. Once again, well over the crossbar, and this time on to the roof of the net. Avondale will go again. It is a barrage of corners in this second half. Certainly going through the full catalogue of corner routines that they have prepared, Avondale. Safri Lyons there to receive the short pass from Kellen Knight. Quick 1-2. Kellen Knight's ball inside. Avondale go again. They haven't quite found the way to pose a significant threat from these opportunities as of yet, Avondale. South have dealt with them fairly comfortably. But if you give a player like Kellen Knight this number of opportunities, or indeed Safri Lyons, who will take an outswinging delivery instead this time, will Avondale eventually be able to find a way through? That ball was into a more dangerous part of the box, but once more South Melbourne deal with it well. Crossfield ball from Bomford, hoping for Furukawa. South look to get up the pitch. Sandu with Furukawa rather. And now the run from Iamano. Still front Iamano, cross inside. And there are some appeals that the ball was over the line. And it looks as if that's the call, referee. Well, confusion reigns at the home of the Matildas. We're not quite sure if the headed attempt crossed the line, and indeed that is the decision. So South Melbourne have the lead. The ball coming in from the right side. The headed attempt looked to be right at Brooke Bennett, but it had enough power to carry the goalkeeper behind. And with that, Raquel Doralis has given South Melbourne the lead. Well, an unconventional route to an opening goal, but it is South Melbourne who have it. Once again, a blistering counter-attack. Ultimately finished off by Raquel Doralis, who's on a bit of a scoring hot streak at the moment. Scored at the weekend as well. That her third goal in this competition. Well, it's real disappointment, of course, for Avondale, who've put out a really good showing in this game up to this point and have been the better team in the second half. They've got nothing to show for it. And it's the class of South Melbourne which at the moment is making the difference. Iamano looks towards Sandu and Bomford. It's the former who gets onto the ball, at least for a moment. Janet Saris, though, for Avondale. In towards Kenny, and now ball sent forward for Avondale. Aquino, whose missed chances will be burning a little bit hotter than they were up until this point. Well, we're having another pause in play as one of the Avondale players, you can see, down on that far side of the pitch, receiving a little bit of medical attention. Certainly, hopefully, from an Avondale perspective, it's not too serious of a concern. They will ready to make a substitution, the Avengers, as a result. It looks to be just by the nature of stretches that are being attempted, maybe a cramping issue. For now, though, South Melbourne, they're continuing their attack down the right-hand side. Cross along the deck, met by Janet Saris. Ball sent inside for Avondale. That one a little bit too much height for Walsh. So the Avondale attacking threat hasn't entirely dissipated. And with that, we will have an Avondale substitution to come. And it's Daisy Scriven who's come into the game. Liliana Lamage, the player who was suffering with that injury and who's been withdrawn. And so with that, looks as if Asia Claridge will step into the centre-back position vacated by Lamage, and Larry Walsh will drop into a right full-back position. It's dangerous giveaway again. Steiner met by Esposito, who was alert to the danger, quick off her line and to close down the space. And yet again, Avondale, they win the ball back so high up the pitch. They get the shot away, but the scrambling South Melbourne defence has done enough to survive on each occasion. Corner sent in, falls to Steiner. Well, the good news is, from a neutral perspective, that the Avondale spirit has certainly not been broken by that Doralis goal. They are continuing to press their case. This is Bomford, though, for South Melbourne. Up to Westland. Doralis is getting into the box just now. Iamano's attempt to return the favour to Misha Westland doesn't quite pay off. Should mention that with Asia Claridge going to the centre-back role, Larry Walsh to the right full-back, and Simone Kenny out to the right wing position, left by Walsh. This is Bomford, who finds Doralis. Raquel Doralis inboard to Westland. Back to Misha Westland. And South Melbourne have their second. Misha Westland with the finish from a tight angle as well. And after a spirited Avondale challenge, especially in this second half, it looks as if the top division team will prove to have a little bit too much quality on the night. There's an injury concern again for Avondale in the aftermath. Misha Westland's goal will go a long way to securing South Melbourne's spot in the quarterfinals of the Nike Cup. Misha Westland, who's found the back of the net plenty of times in NPLW this season, 5 goals to her name. That's her first in the Nike Cup of this campaign. And with under 20 minutes of regulation time remaining, it is a 2-0 South Melbourne lead. Asia Claridge, the player who's gone out of play, having herself gone down with an injury concern at the time that goal was scored. So Avondale will be forced into a second substitution in a matter of minutes. Their fairly thin bench being tested perhaps a little bit more than Derek Donnelly had planned, at least at this stage of the game. A slight delay before we can get back underway with what looks to be Stephanie Gretsch getting ready to come into this game. And our referee happy to wait for Avondale to get back to their full complement of 11 before restarting the play. Gretsch, who runs right back into that defensive position left by Asia Claridge. So Avondale will have to throw everything at this game now if they weren't already. Sandhu for South Melbourne. Looks towards Doralis. Now Bomford. over the top towards Furukawa. Ball has a little bit too much on it though. Scriven plays it back to the other substitute, Gretsch. Stephanie Gretsch, one of the few players in this Avondale team who was with the club last season, winning promotion to the VPL. This is Correa Aquino. Cross into the box. Palmed away by Esposito, just about. It's not been a straightforward night for the South Melbourne goalkeeper, but she's found an answer to each of the challenges she's faced up to this point. And you see the desperation from Avondale as they again attempt to charge into the area. Walsh. Ball looking to pierce through the South Melbourne defence, but Correa Aquino's offside again. You might be able to hear a little bit more frustration coming from the Avondale ranks now. They'll feel like this 2-0 scoreline is very harsh on their performance. Nikki Furukawa for South Melbourne. Cuts on to her right. Looking for Bomford. Misplaces the pass, so Kellen Knight will send it back in the opposite direction. Lyons met by Westland. Still Safri Lyons. Steiner couldn't take control. Now Furukawa, who will certainly look to take advantage of the additional space that the South attackers will be afforded on the counter-attack, with Avondale needing to throw everything at this game now. Christina Esposito in no rush to restart the play. Sends it long up towards Furukawa. Nikki Furukawa, it's a clever touch. Trying to get the shot away, but held on to the ball for just a little bit too long. And a third goal would surely put this game to bed. But for now, the door remains ever so slightly ajar for Avondale. Just under 15 minutes of regulation time remain at the home of the Matildas. It's a mammoth task for Avondale. They are to keep their cup run alive this season. Could prove to be a really important win for South Melbourne this, if they're able to see out the remainder of this game. Mentioned that dry spell they've endured, not having had a win from any of their last 5 NPLW games. They'll hope that coming through a real tough test such as this will set them in good stead. No NPLW football coming this weekend, but the weekend after, when South Melbourne will be back home at Lakeside to take on Bentley Greens. Another eminently winnable game, that one. That ball through, though, for Steiner. Well read by Esposito. South Melbourne later in the month, after that game against Bentley, they are back here at the home of the Matildas to take on FV Academy. So a couple of games against teams in the lower reaches of the MPLW ladder. Could well set South Melbourne up for another bit of a winning run. This is Westland. Kept company by Lines. Played back to Walsh. Larry Walsh managed that effectively. Lines coughs it up to Furukawa. This is Doralis trying to slide through Bomford. Once again, the assistance flag is raised. A little bit of confusion as the assistance flag was raised on that far side, and our central referee doesn't look to have seen it, but that pause in play will allow for South Melbourne to make a substitution. And it's Olivia Bomford who will be withdrawn from the game. And eventually the right decision is made as the offside is acknowledged, so Avondale will be able to get play back underway. And there's a really nice return in the middle of the park for South Melbourne as Bella Sewards is brought into the action. Second season at South Melbourne since signing from Calder. Could well prove to be a key member of the South Melbourne squad heading into the remainder of the season. But her first assignment is helping her team see out the remainder of this game. A game which they have firmly where they want it. Avondale will go to their bench again at the next opportunity. And it's the end of the evening for Larissa Walsh. Withdrawn and replaced by Jess Beddoes, another one of the players brought into Avondale from Casey Comets. And a vastly experienced operator in Victorian football. Played the inaugural NPL season with Southern United. Jess Beddoes also has plenty of experiences in cup competitions. Played, in fact, in the FA Cup in England. She spent some time with Altrincham in Manchester. Not sure how that quite stacks up to a fifth round Nike Cup tie at the home of the Matildas. Is there to be a way back into this contest for Avondale? Lines running into a brick wall in the South Melbourne defence, which has absorbed a lot of pressure tonight in both halves. And edging closer to what would be a very impressive clean sheet. Only kept one clean sheet in the league this season, South Melbourne. So would be very happy to escape this game with their goal unscathed. This is Lines, though, looking to change that. She made good contact with the strike, but couldn't get it far enough away from Esposito. Ball into the area. Met by Haffenden. Got there just ahead of Aquino. Papatsanis miscues the clearance, and at least Kelland Knight will restart play with an Avondale throw. And it's pretty straightforward defending from South Melbourne at this point. No need to launch a counter-attack when they get the chance. They'll just be happy to do their defensive duties. Trying to break through again was Aquino. Cross into the area, finds the head of Steiner. Chance continues with Lines. Ball over the top. There's a really strong defensive challenge, knocking over Addison Steiner. In that last passage of play, the assistant's flag did go up. Our central referee waving it down though. Convinced that all was legal up until that point in the play. You can see that Avondale, they've not lessened the intensity with which they're playing. They're continuing to make life really uncomfortable for South Melbourne, who are trying their best to slow and take the sting out of this game as we approach the final 5 minutes of regulation time. Really a nightmare draw of a fifth round for South Melbourne. They were hoping for an easy route through to the quarterfinals of the Nike Cup. Addison Steiner again. Shot is blocked by Taranto. Steiner continued to work. By the time she got the cross inside, Esposito was there to collapse on top of the ball. Avondale, who after the bye round in VPLW will next head to Banyule City for their next VPLW fixture. Of course, they'll be mainly focused on doing what they set out to do this season in league football, securing promotion to the top flight. This is Furukawa. Well claimed by Bennett. It was a tight angle, but didn't lack power, the shot. Burns sends it up towards Doralis. Doralis and Westland win back the ball. Two goal scorers tonight. Westland now teeing up Bella Sewards. Ping from long range. Well over the crossbar. Steiner, once again running behind, flashes the cross past goal. Aquino, well, it was never an easy one to get on the end of. See Janitsaris trying to urge an ongoing display of intensity for her team. But you wonder if the hopes of rescuing something from this game for Avondale might just be slipping away. They really made their moves at the start of each half, pinning South Melbourne back in a number of really good opportunities, maybe the best of them coming for Correa Aquino. Really a clean shot at goal from the middle of the box. Some wonderful work from Larry Walsh to set up the chance. They weren't able to take them, and South Melbourne, it's a game of fine margins, and the Doralis attempt just about over the goal line to open the scoring before, of course, Misha Westland doubled South Melbourne's lead. By the looks of it, that will be enough for South Melbourne to progress in the Nike Cup. That is unless Avondale to conjure something quite memorable in these final couple of minutes. Janitsaris' long ball met by Haffenden. Taranto reads it better than Aquino, but the Avondale attacker didn't let her off too easy. And so we head into the final minute of the 90. Space here for a South Melbourne counter-attack. Miki Furukawa set away. Looking to turn Beddoes and draws a foul. And an excellent result for South Melbourne, who will be happy to drain some more seconds off the clock. Maybe a chance for Misha Westland to fire home a second of the evening. She's very much capable from this sort of range. Consults, though, with Franny Amano, who may well take it instead. It's Westland who goes directly for goal, right into the Avondale wall. Falls to Furukawa, who shot, I think, tripped up Raquel Durala somewhere in the mix, and it's an Avondale goal kick as the end result. We are now at the discretion of our referee as to how long Avondale will have to maybe at least get a consolation goal, something to reflect their efforts tonight. Run made in behind by Aquino. Central delivery always favoured Haffenden. Cross inside again, hoping for Aquino. And there is Haffenden to send the ball clear. She'll, of course, be very keen to get to the end of this game with a clean sheet intact. The Haffenden-Taranto central defensive combo, as well as Christina Esposito, who've all very much earned their money tonight. Dealing with one of the more fearsome attacking units in Victorian football, despite it coming from the second tier. But it looks as if South Melbourne might be able to escape with a win and having not conceded in the next minute or so. Beddoes retreats to her goalkeeper, Brooke Bennett. Lyons lets it run, hoping for Aquino. Makes life uncomfortable for Haffenden, and Esposito had to be quick to get there ahead of Addison Steiner. But she has been all night and continues to do so. Collapses on the ball, and Christina Esposito is pointing to Misha Westland, who's taken a seat behind play. Referee not interested. And Westland does get back to her feet. Here is Misha Westland winning back possession for South Melbourne. Duralis skips past Beddoes and draws the foul again. And it will be a yellow card for our substitute, Jess Beddoes. And South Melbourne will once again be in no rush to get play back underway as we edge towards a conclusion to this fifth round tie. It's a game that's, I'd say, lived up to the billing. The scoreline might not tell the whole story. Avondale have brought plenty to this contest. Very much proven that even at this point in their development, they are right in the mix with some of the better clubs in NPLW Victoria. Just a slight delay with the restart as South Melbourne will take the opportunity to make another substitution. Raquel Doralis, scorer of the opening goal, will have a bit of an early mark of a few seconds. She's withdrawn. South Melbourne even now continuing to take the Avondale threat seriously, pulling out all the stops to ensure that they get safely through this tie. Sandhu lofts it into the box, falls back out to Akeisha Sandhu. Keno there working back defensively. Sewards out to Iamano. It's Gia Capsamalis who's been brought on for the final seconds of this game, up in the central striker position. Player from the under-20s squad for South Melbourne. Ball sent over the top. Addison Steiner in behind to give Avondale a goal. It's saved by Esposito, but Steiner puts it home. Avondale do have a goal to show for their efforts tonight. Could there possibly be time left for Avondale to extend this game into extra time? A deserved goal for the Avengers. Steiner, the player who scored it. Finally, the South defence is breached. Just a little bit of nervous tension around the ground. But there will be no more time. South Melbourne are through to the quarterfinals of the Nike Cup. They hold off a spirited Avondale challenge, who, as mentioned, proved that they are very much a contender for, or will soon be a contender for some top honours in Victorian women's football. And the team on the charge towards top division football, but they've been knocked out of the cup tonight by a superior opposition, South Melbourne, whose extra bit of quality and class proved to be the difference on the night. Goals from Raquel Doralis and Misha Westland, giving South Melbourne the all-important victory despite Addison Steiner's late consolation goal. South through to the quarterfinals. They will look to add to their hefty silverware cabinet towards the second half of this campaign. But that's all the time that we have from the home of the Matildas tonight. Thank you for your company for what's been a really exciting evening of football. Full-time score, though, Avondale 1, South Melbourne 2.